Hey, buenas tardes, good afternoon. My name is Hector Beltran. I co-lead the COPR's Latinos in Tech Initiative with Hector Tito Callejas back there. On behalf of the chair, Patricia Bacano Lopez, and the Center for Latino Policy Research, welcome to today's panel, Latina Tech Entrepreneurs, Tackling Race and Gender in the Tech Startup Ecosystem. So I want to take this opportunity to also thank all the students who have made this event possible. Kyle Jackson, Giovanni Roman, David Buenrostro, Ulises Serrano, Petra Pilar, Omar Davila, Blanca Gomez, and special thanks to the Center's Program Assistant, Rocio Aguilar Pedrosa. One quick announcement, please turn off your cell phones and sign the sign-in sheet that's going around. And this talk is going to be online for people that want to reference it again later. So personally, I'm very excited to have this event happen. I was one of the founding members of the Latinos in Tech Initiative. I have a very personal stake in the project, having navigated these tech worlds after my computer science undergrad days, now attempting to make sense of my own experience, connecting them with a critical dialogue at Berkeley around issues of diversity that take place in apparently unrelated fields. Ethnic studies, education, anthropology, all of these fuzzy sciences as some of our computer science colleagues might call them. At the CLPR, we're a small but energetic team committed to collaborative work with a broad set of institutions that aim to produce research and policy that can leverage the complexity of the Latino experience in the United States and shed light on the myriad factors that affect the distribution of material, social, and political opportunities. We accomplish our mission through our commitment to community-engaged research projects that work to inform local, state, national, and international policies that affect Latinos. So, I want to introduce our first speaker and panel moderator, Marta Edith. Marta Edith is a storytelling startup coach who recently joined the NewCo team as a festival manager. She'll tell us more about that, emphasizing both marketing and community outreach. She's a proud Cal alum, worked at UC Berkeley's Haas School of Business, where she managed the Lean Startup program. So please join me in welcoming Marta Edith.
We're excited to have you here. The ladies that I'm going to introduce are all personal friends of mine. I'm very honored to be in your presence today, and thank you all for joining us. These ladies are working on some amazing things in tech and in life. So they are the perfect examples of teaching us that your identity is not just in one field. So really, I would encourage you to think about their stories and how they've come to this point in their lives and their progression, and realize that we really are holistic beings. So don't think of tech as just one part. It might just be a little part of your life, but it might just be part of your life's purpose. So first, I'm actually going to introduce the person that wasn't able to join us because she's working on something really cool, and I want to make sure that you all know about it. So one of my good friends, Laura E. Gomez, was not able to join us, unfortunately. But so I'll briefly talk about her, and since she's not here, I don't want to go through her whole bio. I'll just give you a personal story of how I know Laura. Laura and I went to school together, but we actually never really hung out until after. And now our paths have crossed as tech entrepreneurs. She and I met up a couple months ago, and we're talking about this issue of diversity. You know, all these numbers came out, and everybody's talking about how this is a major issue. And we're all trying to tackle it in different ways. And Laura said something to me that was so profound. She looked at me and she said, Marta, why don't we create a tech company to help the issues in the tech diversity world? And I was like, mind blown, right? Like, yeah, why not create a company that disrupts exactly the industry that we're talking about? So that's what she's working on now. She created Atypica. And Atypica is this amazing algorithm where you can put in your resume, you upload it, and it takes away all of the information that could potentially be seen as a bias from a recruiter, it removes your name, so it anonymizes your character. So talk about merit-based placement. It is all about validating that you are qualified and that you're beyond competent. So this is just starting off, so if you're interested, go to Atypica, I think it's .co or .com, not sure, but we can find out. And Laura Gomez is the one running that, so I wanted to give her a shout out because she's an amazing tech entrepreneur, started at Twitter, some other amazing companies, so definitely check her out. We have an amazing, a personal mentor of mine that I'm so happy to be able to introduce. This is, I think, my first time introducing you. Graciela Discareño Sato, a decorated military veteran, a bilingual STEM consultant to K-12 school districts, and a sought-after speaker on environmental entrepreneurship. Definitely know she's a sought-after speaker because the first time I met her was at Latina Style magazine like 4 or 5 years ago. 4 years. Yeah, you were one of the main speakers, and I harassed her after her talk, and I was like, I need to talk to you. And that was the day she was promoting your book, Latino Baby. I think it had just been published. And in her book, Latino Baby, there it is, please show it up. She has more copies, so ask her about that. She graduated from Berkeley in the School of Environmental Design and Architecture, and also completed an aerospace studies program at the Air Force Reserve Officer Training Program. Talk about doing it all, right? I haven't gotten to the point where she has 3 kids, and an amazing mom, and an amazing husband. She has moved forward, progressed into becoming the CEO of multicultural marketing and educational publishing firm, Gracefully Global, which is located in Hayward. The firm creates a unique literature in print and all digital ebook formats that showcase positive contributions of Latino Americans in the U.S. Is Captain Mama book around? Capitan Mama?
Yes, she has.
We'll show that right now. The Latino Mating book, thank you, I'll talk about that one right now, it talks about green American jobs and the Latinos creating them. So we talk about, I don't know about you guys, but in la casa, my mom never let me throw any jars of anything away, right? Like, tenía leche, lávalo. You know, it's like, we're gonna put the jalapenos in there. You know, you think you're opening up the butter container, like, oh, más jalapenos. So I grew up in a culture of what I thought we're broke, but now it's cool because you're recycling. So, right? We're like, oh, I've been so cool since I was 5. So, Latino Mating talks about these entrepreneurs that have built that into a very positive cash flow business and how the rest of us can learn from them. And her book has already gotten 5 awards, so definitely get Latino Mating if you can. Most recently, she published Good Night, Captain Mama, or Buenas Noches, Capitan Mama, the first bilingual children's picture book with military mommies. So talk about, you're a freaking unicorn, right? You're so special. You got you're a rainbow unicorn.
Some would call that.
Special. I love unicorns. I do. She was inspired by her own military service as a military aviator. This title, selected as Best Educational Children's Book in the 2014 International Latino Book Awards, just took first place in the Writer's Digest magazine in the national competition among independent publishers in the picture ebook category. Last March, Graciela was honored at the White House as a woman military veteran leader, as a champion of change. Latina Style magazine selected Graciela as the Entrepreneur of the Year at the Business Gala in Washington, D.C. Last November, she was honored by the Business and Professional Women's Foundation in Virginia with the National Business Women's Week Award honoring veteran entrepreneurs, earning a visit with the First Lady, Michelle Obama. I want to meet her. Graciela lives in Hayward with her husband, Genro or Genro?
Genro.
Genro. Japonés.
Japonés? The Sato part.
Hence, Discareño Sato. who she met at the trombone section at the Cal marching band. Yeah, definitely Cal Bear. And their 3 globe-trotting children who will undoubtedly be future golden bears.
Go Bears.
Yeah. Thank you, Graciela, for joining us today. So I'll finish introducing the rest of our panelists, and Graciela is going to grace us with a presentation, and then we'll go on to Q&A from there with all of the panelists. Ruby! Ruby I met on accident at an event that's called Latina Startup Tour that 2 of our friends put together. And I'm so happy I got to meet you, and you're just so brilliant. I'm so excited that you're working on what you're working on, and I'll tell you what that is. Ruby is deeply passionate about utilizing technology to bridge gaps in healthcare. It is this drive to build patient-centered services and products that has led her to co-found Wearless Tech Incorporated. In 2014, Ruby and her team earned the Most Practical Solution award for her product, Cocoon Cam. This happened at MedHack in San Francisco. And I don't know if you guys know anything about hackathons, but they're intense, super competitive, so this was a great honor that her team won this. And not only, what happens at a lot of hackathons is you'll start a product and a project there, and then it gets abandoned after the weekend. I'm so proud of her team because they started this over a year ago.
Last July.
Okay, last July, so it's good, yeah, less than a year ago. And they have just been marching full forward, mind you, no funding. So that's when you know people are committed. If they're putting their entire heart and soul meeting every Sunday, I think you guys meet, with your own money out of pocket, grassroots funding right there. So I'll let her tell you more about Cocoon Camp, which is really awesome. Ana Luz, I met, we were trying to figure this out the other day, and we don't remember where we met.
She was also looking to start a tour.
Yes, but we've met before.
We've known each other before that, yeah, so.
I don't know.
Somewhere, we were probably partying somewhere in San Francisco, because entrepreneurs know how to party too. So Ana Luz, I really like take my hat off to, just like all these other ladies. When I met her, she started telling me her story. I was just like, my jaw dropped. She's like, yeah, and I went to undergrad at Cal, and I was like, cool, me too. She's like, oh, and then I got a master's in da-da-da. I'm like, no, not me. She's like, and I got another master's in, I'm like, oh, God. Freaking, she's an earthquake engineer. How many Latina earthquake engineers do you know? I actually am thankful enough to be able to say I know 2, only 1 from Cal. So I was just like in awe of what she's working on, and she is, are you the CEO? Vrenergy, yeah. She's the CEO of a new company that she's launching called Vrenergy, which is getting energy from vibrations around the world. And instead of me messing it up, I'll let her tell you what that's about. So those are the ladies that we're going to be talking to and hearing from, and I'll sort of help guide the conversation. And please don't feel like this is a monologue up here. I want engagement, and I might even just point at you and have you ask a question. So that is my version of getting voluntold. So do not be surprised if that happens. Graciela, if you want to come on up and get started. And Graciela will lead the conversation until she feels appropriate. And then we'll sort of guide you ladies this way so we can see them better. Does that work?
So do we have a clicker, or do I need to just kneel here?
You want me to? We can push it for you.
Let's see. Would you like to be my clicker? Is it on? Can't reach it. Okay.
Make yourself comfortable for them.
Just in time. That's great. Thank you. So I'm Graciela, and thank you for the complete intro there. It's really hard to summarize so much, but I always tell people it sounds like a lot, but it happened a day at a time over the course of lots of years. And I'm not trying to tell you that I graduated from here in 1989. So I've been out in the world a long time doing all these different things you're going to hear me hear about that's been happening. But I really wanted to just kind of reflect on these questions that we were sent that we're going to discuss today. So I'm going to just tell you just real quickly some of the highlights. So you can see where I'm coming from, and you can see where I get my crazy policy ideas that I decided to distill them out there for discussion. So about 10 minutes. So this is my familia, typical conservative immigrant parents from Mexico with US-born kids. I was the oldest of 5, and very loving parents, both still living, thank God. But very early on, I was called rebelde. And I was called rebelde for the simple reason, and raise your hand if you can relate, that I saw myself as the athlete and the student and the trombone player. And I didn't really want to come home after school and lavar los trastes y ayudar con la ropa, and I knew that was part of what I was supposed to be doing, but I just found it really annoying because it was taking time away from sports and from everything else. So I was called a rebelde early on because I didn't want to get with the program, the social program. Okay, so I decided to live up to that. Okay, next slide. So here's me at Berkeley. I came here because my high school counselor did a very amazing thing for me that has set my life in motion with mentoring, the power of one mentor. I told her, I want to go to college, it's not my family, we have no money, how do I do this? So she invited me to her house and told me about Air Force ROTC, the scholarship that her husband had gone to school on. So ultimately, that's how I came to Berkeley. So there I am as a little 18-year-old scholarship cadet here at Berkeley. So one woman, my high school counselor, invited me to her house to talk to her husband about a scholarship that paid my whole way through school. They gave me work in airplanes after school. To a woman who had no history whatsoever of anything military. Okay, so she really, truly changed my life. So the power of one mentor. So here's one of the happiest days of my life ever. This is atop the Campanile. You can maybe see the big sea in the background there. Yes. Mommy and Papi putting my gold bars on for lieutenant in the United States Air Force. So the day I graduated, finished the aerospace program, and became a lieutenant. Here is my husband, Genro, 1 hour before he proposed to me. He'd been throwing the question around, if I ask you to marry me, what do you think you might say? And I said, if you ask me too soon and I don't know what I'm doing, the answer is going to be no. But if you wait until I know where my assignment is and that I finished flight school, the answer is a high likelihood yes. So he pinned my wings on the day of my graduation from flight school, took him out to the airplane, we put on our pretty blues to go to the reception, he dropped down on me and proposed that same day. And we celebrate 24 years of marriage next month. So he's my rock, as you said earlier. And I have this quote here, when my mom yelled during the graduation. Okay, imagine it's a military setting. And my mom yells, "Abuelita falda, mujer Latina." She yells this out, she was so proud of me. Because that's my class right there. So if you want to talk about women in male-dominated settings and how you thrive, I'm happy to have that conversation because that's pretty much where I started. Next slide. So I quickly pause this story to say that I started my first IRA before getting married at age 25. Your financial tip of the day, young ladies. Okay? I started flight school. A friend of mine said, hey, there's this financial thing going on, let's go. So I stashed part of my paycheck beginning as a first lieutenant. Paid myself first. Remember this when we talk about how difficult or impossible it is to get funding for a small business. Fund yourself, I say. And then I have this little note here about being polycultural, which is my model. To your point earlier about the introduction. Yes, I'm Latina. Yes, I'm American. Yes, I can work in the military culture. Yes, I can be educated. Yes, I can be authentically me. So I believe that the very first thing we need to teach our children and ourselves as young women and men is that you can be who you actually are and continue to add identities as your life progresses and you become educated and become part of other groups. And as we continue on, there's, oh, look at the wedding. Here's the military arch of sabers and mariachis. So I didn't feel like I had to pick one. Okay? We also had the Japanese sake ceremony for my husband. So we just brought all of it, polycultural. Next slide. That's very important as we get to the business side. So just some pictures of me flying. Every once in a while, yes, I got to fly with 4 women, very rare. Usually it looked like this. KC-135 refueling jet. Next slide. So my job was as an aircraft navigator flying this gas station, KC-135. Base 60 math at 450 miles an hour anywhere in the world. So my job was to do the math to get this airplane, and I'm sitting up here, get this airplane over a certain point of the sky to meet up with airplanes that need gas. And it's taken me all over the world. But there's never a time or a place in this plane to lack self-confidence or self-esteem. So when we think about Latinas and young Latinas and the social stuff we're talking about, okay, there's just never any time for that. So next slide. So you can see my life has always been around technology. Always global, always master new technology, new systems, be it navigation systems or refueling systems. I got out with my master's and I went straight from the cockpit to work for Siemens, the communications company at the GE in Germany. And I worked as a global marketing manager, so I had to learn all this IP and telecom stuff. Later on, I worked for an Israeli company called SolarEdge that did solar power electronics to boost the amount of efficiency of systems. So always new systems. And then I launched my own business, gracefullyglobal.com. /commerce is the store, and then how to learn more systems, right? The online store, how do we do all that, and then global distribution and all that we'll talk about. But I show you this because this has been my life. This is 1990, okay? This is a lot of different stuff. But what's the commonality? Desire to learn. Never being afraid. Never telling myself that, oh, it's too hard. It's like, okay, what is it? Let's find out. Who knows about that, right? And that, I think, is something that we need to foster as we have these conversations about where are the women in technology, where are the women in tech, is to surround young girls with women who keep thinking and keep learning, okay? And I just want to be one of many that I know that they're doing this. Next slide, please. So this is what Martha was talking about. This is my startup. It's an award-winning, 4-year-old now, multicultural educational publishing and advocacy firm. So we produce books in all digital formats. We produce DVDs, and then I do a lot of speaking webinars. And the DVDs are for special education purposes because I have a 13-year-old daughter who's blind. And that's a whole other conversation. But I'll show you the slide that I just got it when I was at the White House. I got why I do all of this. I'll show you in a second. It's really because of my daughter. Next slide. So our books do one thing and one thing only. It's a social mission. And that is how you said it. You said it perfectly right there. Showcase positive contributions to Latino Americans in the USA. Some publisher that's been around for 150 years in New York City is not going to do what I'm doing. They're not going to value our stories. They're not going to put them in K through 12 circulation. And if they ever get around to doing it, why should they get to make the money from it? Why can't we start those new businesses and tell our stories? So I encourage you to publish your story. I encourage you to start your own publishing company. Okay? Because it's not going to happen any other way. You have to disrupt, and you have to get into the school districts in creative ways because they all do things the way they do things. Okay, next slide, please. So you talked about the Latino Innovators. I just want you to see their faces. This is the first 10. Okay, the book is really about who are the people who grew up conserving everything, who believe that vale más reusar que descartar, who either grew up in a family that was highly educated from Bolivia or Cuba, or grew up in an migrant camp. We all had these incredible values, and I started interviewing people and realized that that is the base foundation of innovation, is knowing that you have to be smart with what you have. If you have no capital, if you self-fund, if all you have is butter dishes for jalapenos. It's like you innovate with what you have. And it's incredible when you start realizing across all these industries, from commercial printing to social justice to eco-product cleaning, you know, the high-intensity discharge lighting, fashion, renewable energy storage, venture capital, robotics, packaging. We're all over the place innovating. And I want you to meet those people and know those stories. And so I start in childhood and I go all the way through higher education and all the way through innovation and entrepreneurship. Next slide, please. I'm already working on the second book. I'm already like 6.5 chapters into this one. And this one's going to have mostly women. It just kind of happened that way because, you know, Latina start businesses is 6 times the national average. But the stories are incredible. I'll just tell you hers. This is Elizabeth Perez, Navy veteran, lost her roommate in the bombing of the USS Cole in Yemen in 2001 when the terrorists parked next to the Navy ship and blew it up. Her roommate, Nicole Palmer, was in there and was killed that day. So she knows, like I do, that we're dying for oil. So she says, why should not the veterans, powered by vets, GC Green is her company, why shouldn't the vets be the first to benefit from the green economy? So she said, well, how do we do that? So she started a company that not only does renewable energy projects for the government, the county, the army, but only employs vets that she trains. So it's workforce development meets renewable energy, large federal contracts. Okay, and she's 36 years old. So she's just one of my examples. Next slide, please. And then my 3 kids, yes. So Milado's 13, Totomi's 10, and then here's my little boy Kiyoshi who just turned 8. The night before this picture was taken at the preschool, I was wearing my flight suit, and he saw me and saw the patches. And he started asking what they all were, ripping them off. And his questions inspired this book that you heard about earlier, When I Just Got It Done, Mama. Next slide, please. So So what I've learned because of that curiosity in publishing this book, and now actually intentionally telling my military story, which I wasn't doing before. Before it was all about telling other stories and entrepreneurship and Latino leaders. Now I get to tell my story because of this children's book. And what I've learned is through the STEM of aviation, which is one of the talks I give to middle school kids, the airplane is a teaching tool for STEM. Where else do science, technology, engineering, and math converge but an airplane? And so this is a picture of taking 25 Latinas who've never even been to the airport. Took them out to San Carlos Airport last year and gave them their first ride in general aviation aircraft. Organized by my friend Ana Uribe, who owns her own airplane. Okay, so we are stepping into school districts and saying, hey, talk about role modeling, we're going to take you out to the plane and we're going to show you. So they all got their rides and they get to wear the uniforms and they just get to really imagine that they can do this too. So yep, I just go to schools and spark some dreams, and they're little, they're older. Here's my 10-year-old. Use my story really to tell what's possible. Next slide. I mentioned real quickly, Milagro. When I was asked to go to the White House, I was asked to put together a 600-word post. That's tricky. And for the White House blog. So it had to be something really important. And what I realized is the reason I do this work now, to speak and to publish and to show our stories, is because I've been forcefully advocating for my daughter who doesn't see and also doesn't hear without technology. And so here's what the quote from the day is, if she can achieve all that without eyesight and with a severe hearing impairment, imagine what little Latinos without those impairments can accomplish if only all educators, administrators, and parents have high expectations of them. So I really have come around to realizing that it is about those expectations. I expected my daughter, severely impaired, to read, to write, to do math, to be curious, to be athletic. She just got inducted into the California Hall of Fame, California School for the Blind Braille Writing Hall of Fame. First kid to be inducted into that for perfect Braille across 200 questions. Okay, because of those expectations. And so now I'm like even more on fire about it, realizing that it is because of the expectations that success happens. Yes? Next. We'll skip that one. So I'll get real. Okay, not everybody comes into this so happily. We have this very real thing that happens in our community. The CDC, 1 out of 7 Latina teenagers has either died by suicide or attempted suicide. It's a very real thing. Highest ratio of any ethnic group. Okay, here's this profound quote about adolescence and rates for the last 20 years. This researcher for UT Austin. Next slide. So why? Why is this? A very wordy slide. Don't intend to read all of it, but I've touched on this in my own life. Okay, the family playing a unique role. The young women being pulled in opposite directions with the family and the culture. When you have this culture divide, immigrant parents and a daughter born in the U.S., it's a built-in struggle. Raise your hands if you know what I'm talking about. Anybody have that built-in struggle? Okay, so do we align with the Latino culture, or is acceptance by peers more important? Somehow we're made to choose that, and why? Why? Where does that come from? But it's there, right? And then there's protective factors and all of that. And then dating, extracurricular activities, and conflicts between mother and daughter play roles. ¿Por qué no estás en la casa? Porque estoy en el juego de fútbol, tocando trombón. You know, so it's like, but you know, I didn't realize that that was so common. I just thought it was me being me. But you know, these are issues I say are plugging up at the very beginning end of the Latina tech pipeline. That's actually, to quote Margarita Kiwis, who says it's actually straw. It's not really a pipeline. Okay, so we've got this big plug there. So I want to talk about how we unplug that, because you can't really get to the other end. Next. So I'm just going to throw some resources up here. There's this great article, 5 Biases Pushing Women Out of STEM. You know, now that you're at the other end and now you got through all the struggle and you survived and you're educated, now you're actually working, why do women leave? So this is an amazing article from Harvard Business Review. I encourage you to look at it. Little patterns all summarized there. It's the prove it again, the tightrope, the maternal wall, the tug of war, and isolation. Each of them are very interesting, and I think each of those warrants some discussion. Next slide. So conversations about biases, you know, this is still from the study. Okay, so that got posted on Facebook, and then we had this conversation about it, which was very interesting. And look at this. This is last week. I've had successful women offer advice on how they're able to hide the fact that they had kids.
Wow.
So that it wouldn't impact their work in being selected for projects. I hope this advice is not needed, as I don't plan to hide my family's important. I kind of told her down with that advice. And then said that the women who were 20 years older thought this was necessary, passive aggressive, and how she was basically, she was not allowed on her project, or on her project that did not allow vacations, and her mom was dying. And she realized how sad that was and how many women define professional achievements by the personal compromises they make. If you find yourself in this environment, please leave. My God, there's so many other places to work, right? Which is why we turn on entrepreneurship many times, right? But this is what's happening out there. Imposter syndrome is real, and you have the confidence. And then this is the one that really got me. I wonder how to teach my daughter confidence. I honestly don't know how I'm going to do that. Back to everything I said before, is it starts back there. If she is now reproduced, how does she teach confidence when she herself is not? Big questions. Next. So here's my crazy suggestions. Why not mandatory mentoring? Yeah. Okay, there's a program at Fordham University, and I brought a handbook for you today, Keisha. Fordham University, Dr. Ellen Silver started this 12 years ago, very successful. 6th grade girls start going to campus every week with a Latina student who's enrolled. So by the age of 11 or 12, you already know you belong in college. And you've already got your mentors. And you're there every week, every month, whatever the program is. She's got this whole handbook already prepared of how to do it, how to talk to the mommies and poppies who are overprotective and the whole thing. So I wrote about her and featured her program because it's very, very important. And this awesome quote from a 13-year-old. I learned that being Latina doesn't stop you from being someone in life. I used to think that because I'm Latina, I wouldn't get as many opportunities as everyone else. But now, at age of 13, being continuously mentored, whoever told her that, that's been overwritten with possibility. And I think that's awesome. Okay, so mandatory mentoring would be a cool thing if we could do that, beginning at age 11. Next slide. Flood your minds with success stories, not the novelas. I'll just say it. So here's my friend Nora May. Her article just published recently, Attracting Latina Students to STEM Careers One Role Model at a Time. I mean, really, what else can we do? It's one at a time, you know, just trickle it over the course of an entire childhood and then they'll get it, right? But she has her own fantastic story, which I'll let you read about. MIT engineer. So my solution, just throwing it out there, telenovelas off the air, negative, sexualized, demeaning images hurt girls growing up with this stuff, so I'll just say it. Mandate the presence of positive images of diverse role models beginning at age 5. Okay? In books always, weekly in the classroom, flood young minds with a long-term view of what success is like. What if they could meet you this week, and you next week, and you next week, and you the week after that? What if our kids grew up actually knowing that we exist? Instead of career day once a year when they get whoever happens to show up for free that day on Tuesday, and it's all these retired old guys from pharmaceuticals, and all the kids are like, what? So this is my idea: mandatory mentoring with college-educated women for all girls beginning age 11, because then they could explore a bunch of fields their entire lives, and then when they decide to go to college, they'll know what engineering is and that there's lots of different types. Versus how it's done today. Mandatory pay yourself first rule upon receiving your first paycheck. Fund yourself. Because when it comes time to do your startup, it's really nice to already have a bunch of cash that you put away for yourself for that day in the future when you need it. And I can only say that because I did that. I haven't had to go pitch or get money or stuff. Mandatory polycultural training. This is what I said earlier. Confidently, you'll learn how to be Latina, American, educated, military, multilingual, work in the business world, be an engineer, be globally savvy. What if we could do all these things? What if we could actually have kids that had this education growing up? Then they'd really be free to pursue anything that they want to invent. I think that's my last suggestion slide. My impact slide. What happened to the team? So I'll close with this, because really what I do comes down to this, about being present and being there for the kids in whatever form I can be. This little girl in San Lorenzo, I did the presentation in Spanish for Veterans Day at her school. 550 kids, and she was in the front row. And this is on the second visit that I did. In the assembly, she was in the front row. And as they were leaving, she pulled on my sleeve and stopped her whole, they're all walking out in a line, and she stops, and they all run into her. And she just really wanted to tell me this. So she pulled on my sleeve and said, Capitana Mamá, yo también quiero hablar inglés como tú. And I came down here and I told her, I held her hand, and I said, I know you're going to do all the math and all the science and all the reading that it takes to fly airplanes. And I said, don't you ever let anybody tell you you can't. Because I was imagining maybe she goes home and tells her mom she wants to fly airplanes, and her mom says, estás loca. So this is why continuously flooding them with these ideas is important. I think that's the end. So this is just where I come from, what I do, what I believe, and the way that I can participate participate in the answering of the questions. I think I've answered some already, but I wanted just to throw those crazy ideas out there. So thank you so much.
Thank you. Turn this off.
Yeah.
Thanks. And if you three can join me up here, can you all see them here? If not, I encourage you to move yourself accordingly. Let me move your chair a little bit this way. Because we're all adults here, so figure out where you have to go. Right here. Thank you. There we go.
Perfect.
Innovation.
There we go.
Unplug it. Great, thank you so much, Graciela, for that intro. You definitely set us up with the perfect foundation for continuing this conversation. So you've already gone through your last journey, how you got to Berkeley. I'd like for the rest of the panelists to share. We're going to do just a 1 to 2 minute, I'm going to call it a dissertation, on your journey to and during Berkeley. One, very, very brief. I'm going to engage in that as well, only because I think that'll help set up the rest of the conversation. It'll frame where we're coming from and why we even care about this. So Ana Luz, can you please give us just a quick background on sort of where you came from and how you got to Berkeley, and we'll sort of cut it off there and then we'll continue with the conversation, which is just very, very brief.
Sure. I was born in Mexico, and I came to the US when I was about 9 years old. Didn't really know how to speak English, but I threw myself out there and tried to learn as quickly as possible outside the comfort zone of being put in ESL classes and things like that. Also, seeing this reminded me, I was the rebelde of my family. It was always challenging the status quo and all the expectations that were put on me just because I was Latina, I was a woman. So I'm pretty sure a lot of the gray hairs that my parents had were because I la preguntona, and why can't you just be like your cousins? And I just like sit there quietly and take everything we tell them to do, So just being that person, I guess it made it so that I applied to the schools that my parents didn't know the whole funding situation, so I think they brought up going to, I grew up in near Monterey, not the pretty city, but like the barrio and like in the small town. So they wanted me to go there at first, because it was close to home. And but I think I had the fortune of having crossed paths with people, like you said, with good mentors that were like, oh no, well, apply to Berkeley, apply here, and then the funding part, my parents, they don't know about that either, and I got the Gates Millennium Scholarship, and then, but they
Only that one.
but my dad for a long time was refusing to give like all his, he's like, why do you need all this information about, the finances and all these things? That's weird. Like, what am I gonna do with your information? And I was just like, I just need this. Let me have it. So I really begged them to let me do this. And then I spent an entire winter break applying to the scholarship, which was 15, 20 essays and other things and things like that. So yeah, so I ended up at Berkeley, and was it up to Berkeley? Up to Berkeley. Yeah. Okay, so I made it to Berkeley.
Awesome. Because we can have a whole other conversation about how to survive Berkeley. That's another panel right there. But we'll skip that for now. Ruby.
Okay. Hi everyone. My name is Ruby Sanchez. I was born in Mexico City, and my parents immigrated here when I was 2 years old. I grew up here undocumented, and in San Francisco, and it was a really great experience. Well, not the undocumented part, but just growing up in San Francisco, and it's 30% Asian, so naturally I veered towards actually a lot of Chinese friends that I had, because when I was a part of the honors program, it was pretty much 90-something% Chinese people. In order for me to make it out and with friends, I had to be able to get out of my comfort zone, have someone that traditionally likes to talk to my Chinese classmates, and that was really cool. We all got along very well. maybe not at first, but later on we did. And as well, always a rebel. So growing up, I always like watched Bruce Lee movies.
Yes.
It was going on at home, and so I told my dad I want to learn kung fu, and we went to the kung fu institute, or whatever, and he was like, "No, mija, it's un poco expensive." And then my mom was like, "Why do you want to do that? Like, you know, you're gonna get hurt, whatever." And then in 6th grade, I got the opportunity in middle school to get taught karate for free, and I was like, well, it's not kung fu, but you know, it's still martial arts. So I did that, and then always loved sports. My mom was always talking about the telenovelas, and I'd always be talking about like, oh, I want to go outside and play. And it was never really like with the girls that wanted to like sit down and talk. I was always like, I want to get into the action. You know, playing with the boys, and my mom would be like, I think at some point she even asked me if I was gay. And I was like, no, Mom, I just love kicking this. Yeah, and so like in 7th grade, I joined Taekwondo as well. So I was doing karate, Taekwondo, and then also basketball, and then just like studying my butt off. And it turned out, I didn't know then, but I met my husband then in Taekwondo, and it turned out very well because he's okay with me kicking ass.
Not his.
So yeah, I went to a Lowell high school, which is also predominantly Chinese and Asian, and I applied to the Gig Moon scholarship. I was a semifinalist, but unfortunately, because I didn't have a social security number, I didn't make it all the way to the end. So then I came to Cal. Anyway, my dad's like, you know, don't worry about it. I'm gonna figure out how to pay for it. He got 2 jobs, and I promised him I'd graduate in 3 years. So I did that, and after I graduated, before I graduated, I wanted to be a doctor, and I'll leave it there because you said it's awesome.
I said, wow. Nobody in there. So surprised. I'm like, you're being so obedient. Because I know, I'll be like, maldita sea, stop. They know me.
She's like the other one rebelling.
Yeah, exactly. I'm rebel against the rebel.
Yeah.
Okay.
Exactly.
So I'll give you a brief background on me. I was first generation born in the U.S. My parents are from Jalisco, Mexico, and which is why I kind of look like a of like Persian white, this weird kind of, you know, I'm like I'm not in Mexico. I'm not Mexican enough, and here I'm not white enough. So it's like como la India Maria, ni de aquí ni de allá. And yes, I do have blue eyes. I know that's weird. But a lot of my family has blue eyes and green eyes, and that's what I grew up with. So when I came to Cal, I felt really weird because I was actually not included in a lot of things. So that's a whole other story. But my parents came from Jalisco. I was first born here. My parents never finished elementary school. So for me, they barely know how to read and write. So, you know, you can imagine no schooling whatsoever to, hey, Mom and Dad, I got accepted into Cal. And they're like, I guess that's okay. So long story short, I also thankfully had amazing counselors that believed in me. I did not personally check off the UC Berkeley box. I wrote all the essays and everything, and somebody else like wrote to apply to Berkeley, and I was like, whatever. So I remember it was the very last one, right? Berkeley always waits. So I had already got accepted to all the other ones, and I was like, cool, you know, let's see where I'm gonna go. And I got the Berkeley acceptance, and my teachers were like, oh my God, you have to like go there. And I was like, I don't know where it is. And I don't even know how to spell it. It's got so many E's. And I was so totally like, no, it's so far away from my family and my mom and everything. And they're looking at me like, are you stupid? My teachers could not believe this. But actually a lot of them told me, do not even bother to Cal, you're going to fail your first semester. And I was like, why? And like, you already have 2 strikes against you. You're Latina, and you're a woman. Like, what makes you think that you're going to survive Cal? So that's my background there and getting to Berkeley. And also a very important part talking about cultural. My mommy and I did not agree on this. Mi mommy grew up with a lot of telenovelas. So did I, but I always wondered, ¿por qué siempre están llorando? Y no se cansan de llorar. Like, do something with your life. So she actually disowned me for 3 months when I actually ran away to Berkeley. She refused to, so I actually forged her signature. Shh, don't. Because I was still 17 at the time, so I forged her signature on a lot of paperwork to be able to get all the stuff I needed at Cal, because she wouldn't do it and I didn't have any parental guidance that would actually sign that. So I was like, well, my name's Marta too and hers is too, so it's okay, right? And mind you, they ended up going to my graduation, and it was the first time since I was 4 years old, because I did the Chicano one, that I remember my dad held my hand and he squeezed me so tight. And he doesn't know how to say te quiero, mija, but that squeeze was good enough for me. Right? I was like, that squeeze from Papi, that was good. So that's the background with the Latino family and playing into this whole world of, especially being in tech, people get really confused and like, wait, so how are you fluent in Spanish again? Right? And that whole question, and funny enough, they question competence, which is hilarious because it's like, you do know I'm smarter than you because I'm bilingual. So I go there. I do play that card. And I'll share this because estamos en familia. Going back into, thank you for sharing Kung Fu story. Because that made me, I grew up in high school, I did theater because that was the only place I could go. The only thing mom let me do, y yo fui like a fuerzas. She wouldn't let me do anything else porque todo costaba, right? So I was like, fine, mom, I found theater, aquí no nos cobran nada. Can I do this, please? She said no, so I still went. And it really built up my self-confidence, and it boosted, it let me realize there was a place that I could go to feel safe, and I could pretend to be someone else and not get in trouble for it. And that was the very first time where I realized, wow, I have this power to really engage an audience, and that's sort of what I realized is part of my purpose now. So that's why I became a storyteller and a coach to other people who want to engage and tell their stories, personal stories, business stories, everything. And I'll share this with you. This is the first time I'm talking about it publicly. Since I was 16 years old, I was diagnosed with a chronic disease. I was diagnosed with everything gastrointestinal, everything. I had IBS, I was gluten intolerant, I was lactose intolerant, I had Crohn's, I was allergic to my own intestines. So mind you, if I drank water or didn't drink water or ate something, I was constantly in pain. So imagine waking up and having your finger over an open fire all day, but you can't put it out. It was inside the pit of my stomach right here. So I was actually petrified every day of opening my eyes, because I knew the second I opened my eyes, I would be in instant pain, and morphine wouldn't stop it. So the doctors didn't know what was wrong. Went to college, came to Cal, ended up at the ER many, many times, got endoscopies, and nobody could figure out what was wrong. And I finally decided, you know what, this is my body, my life, why am I going to ask other people who sometimes don't know what they're talking about? So I wrote a book. It's a personal memoir of how I healed myself. I can gladly tell you now it's been an official year that I healed myself from this chronic disease, and it's my job to help other people do this. So I did it through meditation, yoga, and learning about the power of the mind. And my book is going to get published soon, and I'm going to talk to you more about that. It's called How I Stopped My Slow Suicide, because I know that's what that was. And sometimes our mind plays tricks on us. So I wanted to bring that up because it's part of the holistic experience of, yes, I'm in tech, but I'm choosing not to separate my personal life, because I cannot go to work and be in pain and pretend to be okay with it. And I don't want any of you to hide any part of who you are, because it's part of your life purpose. So engage with that.
And also don't hide your children.
Yes, right. Talk about don't hide any part of an extension of yourself. Right? That's sad. Yeah. But you know, it's happening. Right? So thank you for allowing us to be on that soapbox. Getting into the hardcore questions here. So, gonna go right at this. What are some of the race and gender related issues that you've encountered as a Latino entrepreneur within the tech startup ecosystem, and how have you managed that or maneuvered it to sort of resolve in as positively as possible? Say.
So I actually had a meeting with an angel investor from the Berkeley area, and I won't disclose his name.
She's looking at me because I introduced her to it.
But I was talking to him about, advice for fundraising and, trying to see if he was going to be a possible angel investor. And he said, well, are you guys going to get someone, that dresses, talks, and like looks like me? Because the reality is, like, that's how most people have these conversations or conversation with something like that. And I told him, like, no, like, you know what, that's going to have to be me. Like, you're talking to me right now, and I'm the one telling you these ideas, and I'm the one with the strategy, and that's going to be me that handles those conversations. And so I think the important learning from there was I didn't blow up like I did in my head. Yeah, internally, because like just the entrepreneurship culture is very small, and it's a very small world, and the best way I needed the best way for me to show him that that wasn't true, just like in martial arts or anything else, is to just prove him wrong. That's why that's really.
I think for me, part of the entering the entrepreneurial struggle of being Latina and Latina female, and it started with my family because it scared the hell out of them. And my dad talked to me. He's like, well, I mean, you made it this far, and you have a very stable engineering job that's like financially, mind you, in the past 2 years, I was financially helping my family with their mortgage and everything else. So, and all of a sudden, it's like, well, why are you doing this? So I feel like it's so many extra obstacles that happen that it isn't just the fact that I'm gonna go talk to investors and people that look at me and they're like, well, you're different than everybody else that's talked to us. But it's also on the family side, the community side. Good thing I'm surrounded by great women that are doing things and make me feel like I'm not too crazy for doing this, but
crazy together.
We're crazy together, crazy in a good way.
Yeah.
But not having that support originally from my own family and even some friends that just kind of weird to them that made these decisions. So I think that was the first upfront struggle that I faced. I mean, that's the one I'm sharing. So.
Well, I have a different path, but what's coming to my mind with this question is what I was talking to you about earlier with pitching, right?
Yeah.
Unless you've taken the advice that I was saying earlier, where you've looked ahead and say, I'm always going to have money that I have for myself, for my future, because you just don't know what the future brings, right? And so I'm going to pay myself first, I'm going to have that. I did not know when I started saving as a second lieutenant that I was going to one day start a business. I had no idea. But it was something that I thought I would need for someday, right? So I can't answer it from the, I've been looking for funding and been rejected, because I haven't had to do that. But what I do know is that I'm in these circles and I go to pitch contests, and I was actually just asked to be a judge at a pitch contest that I was sharing with you. So it's a resource. April 20th at JFK, they have the, in Pleasant Hill, the Institute for Entrepreneurial Leadership, which Laura Gomez introduced me to that organization. They have a pitch contest, and you can just go. It's the evening of April 20th. I'll give you more details afterwards, but I think it's 5:30 to 8:30, and I went to the last one. And people just go there. It's 10 people that are selected, and there's a panel of judges, and you hear them pitch for 2 minutes, and then you hear the judges who are like the pretend investors asking the questions. So it's like Shark Tank. If anybody watch Shark Tank? Okay. So it's Shark Tank on TV, but it's live, and you get to be there and hear. And so I think from something we could do for ourselves, and this applies to anybody who is starting a business or thinking of starting a business, just go to one of those. Write down the questions that the judges are asking. Like, well, what are you going to do with that $800,000, and how quickly am I going to get it back? But they ask you, like, what exactly is my ROI and my payback time, and how many units do you have to sell for me to get my money back, and how long is that going to take? So write down the questions that you're hearing, but because then when it's your turn, we're having this conversation all the way over here, you're not going to be shocked by these questions because they're the same questions many times, right? And then, so I think what's really important for us to do is to be in those places that are really like free knowledge for yourself so that you remove the things that scare you. Like, what if I don't know the answer to that financial question? Okay, well then bring your chief financial officer or somebody that can act as your CFO, that type of bitch, that knows the numbers, right? So I think if we put ourselves in those places, we're going to be able to get over a lot of these obstacles. And then if we're seen in the pitch phase and you're seen in those circles, and the day you're actually really looking for money, you're not a stranger. Right? They've gotten used to seeing more faces like yours and mine and yours and yours and yours because we've been there. But if we never go there, and the only people pitching continue to look like that investor, then nothing's going to change. So we need to just be in those places. And to be asked to be a judge is really cool. And I'll do the next one, I can't do this one. But I think the more we show up, the more we are part of that ecosystem. So, I don't know, did I answer the question? I think just kind of show up, be there, be seen.
Love it.
Be seen, be seen, be seen many times. Even in the audience. Let's see some faces like ours in the audience.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that's absolutely perfect, and she brings up a good point that I wanted to put on the table here is showing up is half the battle, right? So if we're not showing up, they can't see our faces, they really don't know that we exist.
Right.
So let's make it obvious that we're here and we're around and we're making some shit happen. And definitely, you know, I have a sad story to share. When I was running the technology accelerator at UC Berkeley, it was free to participate. It was 2 months of free teaching from amazing faculty from UC Berkeley, and I was recruiting like heck through the Latino organizations, and I had 28 slots to fill. Only 30 people in their mini companies applied. Mind you, you didn't even have to be a company, you just needed to have a friend with an idea. And you know where I ended up recruiting Latinos from? From Chihuahua, Mexico. None of the Latino organizations that I was a part of here in the Bay Area, nobody applied. Mind you, I would meet them in person, they would tell me, yes, Marta. But you know what, they were self-selecting out, because they're like, oh, we don't have this, we don't. Like, I'm telling you, you're gonna get in because I'm gonna tell you, I decide who gets in. And I can't let you in if you don't even freaking apply. So showing up and following through and leveraging the people the few of us that are in this space, leverage us.
But doesn't that come back to the self-confidence?
Yes.
The self-esteem?
Really quick?
Yes, please.
So I really resonated with what you said, the parents thing, and I think it's not just the parents, but it's also everyone around us. So like, I constantly have like ideas. I'm just very creative and freaking around, think of nature. And whenever I share it with like my cousins or like even like my husband or my parents, they'd be like, "You're crazy." I mean, they already know I'm kind of, but they're like, "You're like crazy. Like, how are you gonna make that happen?" And I'll be like, "Oh, well, you can do this or you can do that or whatever." And one day I was sitting in a bar. And like in the corner,
Meditating.
I'm meditating, yeah. That's where I go meditate. And
That's where ideas happen, guys.
that's where the ideas happen. Yeah, there was two Caucasian guys like sitting like not too far from me, and I was just like, and so one of them was like, "Hey man, like I have this idea, and like this is what I'm thinking." And his friend like never told him once that he was crazy or like, "No, like how are you gonna do that? Like why are you gonna quit your job?" He just right away he was like, "Oh, why don't you do this instead?" Or like, "Have you thought about this?" Or like using these resources. And the dynamic of that conversation was just so different. The dynamic.
Yes. Oh my God. I wanna echo on that because I've had a lot of conversations with different people and the way they react to what I tell them I'm doing. So I think some of them it's more like in this belief that I could come up with an idea like the one I came up with, and two, like really questioning whether I am really capable of doing such a thing. But I'm like, but I'm an earthquake engineer, but I have experience in this and that. And I feel like I'm sort of always having to, like, when they're questioning, like, proving it over and over again. And I'm like, why? How come, like, other people that, you know, just mention something and it somehow it's like there's no question about, are they Are they very like, you know, experienced in the field? They have all these things. That's not the question they get. But that's the question I get often. And I think maybe being part rebellious and other things in the past, it's sort of like, I'm just like, here we go again. But I'm just like, I think I've just sort of like become used to it, that it's like, okay, well, I just emphasize this and that, and then I'm like, go on and do this. And I'm like, and also thinking about differentiating between the people that are going to be your supporters and the people that are not going to be, and that is just that conversation. Either it's going to be a waste of time, or at the very least my purpose is like, for them is going to be an awareness that there is such a person that looks like myself that would come up with something like that and actually has a plan about it. And then the other thing is, okay, at what point have I achieved that? And then, okay, move on, because if I continue talking to them, there's nothing more that's going to come of it.
I don't think you've heard what she's thinking of doing and what her idea is.
I was just thinking that, yeah.
Because it's pretty awesome. So why don't you actually tell us?
Energy and Pickle Camp.
Yeah, tell us, because when I met you last September, I was just like, oh my God, that was amazing. So yeah, please.
And she was so surprised that we're like, yeah. She's like, really? What's
A whole room full of us.
Yeah. So I am trying to create a new type of renewable energy. So harnessing energy from vibrations. I had this idea when I was a freshman in undergrad. Back then, I think I went up to a professor here at Berkeley, and I told him, I was like, why can't we just get energy from earthquakes? And you know why? Because I've always been environmentally conscious since I was really young. And I remember he said to me back then, maybe it wasn't the right professor, I shouldn't have the conversation with him, but he said that's too crazy. So then I just obviously put it behind me. I was like, well, freshman year, okay, maybe I'm too young to make these decisions and thoughts. And then the years sort of passed by. And anyway, going back to what I'm doing is trying to harness that energy, not just from earthquakes, but from trains, from cars, from herds of animals, just any kind of like general vibration that you can imagine, and tapping into it and converting that into electricity, which is what we need, right? Something that's going to be widely available. So because it is vibrations, they happen all the time. And they could happen on the other side of the earth, and we could still be able to tap into, because some of it gets preserved through the core and the mantle and all these things. And also because it's so constantly around us with the infrastructure, you know, like in Caltrain and BART, and being able to just tap into it. Or like, you know, Martha and I were having a conversation, like being at Six Flags and you're in the roller coasters. And, you know, I'm creating energy. And then the way the way I think of it is, I think of it as wasted energy, because I'm like, it's there, it's available, it's just a matter of tapping into it. So it's sort of like thinking outside the box. And now, having had so many years of you know, education and learning about earthquakes, learning about structures, how they deform, how the earth you know, amplifies or de-amplifies vibrations and things like that, it just sort of, maybe it was good that back then I was told it was too crazy, but it gave me enough time to sort of learn much more, and sort of reprove this idea. Okay, maybe it is tangible, it is possible. Now it's a matter of finding a team that's going to fill in the holes of my, you know, my lack of knowledge of something else. And so for me, it's the idea and you know, tapping into that. So
You heard it here first.
Yeah,
Start pulling out your checkbooks.
Yeah, so that's what I'm doing.
For energy.
Vibration, renewable energy.
Yeah.
Cocoon Camp.
It is.
So Cocoon Camp is the name of our first product. We're formally, our company's name is Wearless Tech. And the reason is because we have this proprietary method that's able to detect vitals, which I mean heart rate, respiration, and skin temperature from video stream. So there's nothing attached to the body, which is why we're calling it Wearless instead of wearables. So our very first product is called Cocoon Cam, and what Cocoon Cam is, it's a video baby monitor that gives you the video and the vitals of your baby without anything attached to the body. So it's a camera device that you attach next to the crib, and you're able to just log into your phone wherever you are. You can see the baby's little heartbeat and the little respiration rate. Because a lot of parents have that pain point when the baby is sleeping. From the video, you can't tell if the baby is okay. Unfortunately, most cases of sudden infant deaths happen when the baby is sleeping, so they have this fear, and they're constantly like doing crazy things, like going up and poking the baby, or putting mirrors in front of it, or like staring at it for minutes just to see the little rise and fall. But down the line in the future, there's definitely other applications like healthcare, remote patient monitoring, security and surveillance, airports as well, the whole thing that Ebola came on, about security, being able to see if somebody might be nervous for potentially the wrong reason or might be a person of interest. So we're still exploring all of these possibilities right now. We have a working prototype. It works up to a meter out, and that's where we're at right now. We're going to start trials at UC San Diego soon with real babies, and we just got accepted to the National NSF I-Corps program, which will give us a small $50K grant to continue those trials and build our actual MVP.
Just let the Caper Center out to see if anybody is aware of that resource still.
That you're,
That
yeah,
as a
perfect.
resource?
Feeding into
Yeah.
my next question.
Good,
So,
good. Just so that we know.
perfect. So this is a two-part question. I want to know, what do you think that the tech industry in general could do to become more inclusive of Latinos? And are there any resources you can share? And actually, I'm going to pause right there, noodle on that, because I want to throw something out here right now that's very important. And this was, I can tell you right now, the day I had this moment of eureka, I was like, I get it now. Okay. So there came a day where throughout my Berkeley career, I was like, I'm Latina and I do this, I'm Latina, I do this, I'm Latina, I do this. And that mindset was inherently hardwired to undermine myself. So now, I'm an amazing kick-ass businesswoman in the tech industry with bonus, I'm Latina. Okay? So, and I so happen to be bilingual, and. So I'm gonna challenge you to shift the perspective as to what's your identity at your core of your life's purpose and how you wanna help the world. And Latina, it just so happens to be a feature of who you are, which is how I see products, as potential features. They are part of the whole. Okay? So I just wanted to throw that out there because it hasn't been said yet, and that's something that I will always get on my soapbox for that. So thank you for the pause. And I'll repeat the question. What can the tech industry in general do right now to be more inclusive of Latinos and Latinas? And are there any resources that you would like to share?
So I'm going to answer this by thinking of the place, the tech companies that I've worked at, the big one, the small one, and then also clients that I have. So we know that tech companies have employee resource groups, ERGs, okay? But what's really telling is the ones that actually are funded versus the ones that just kind of exist, within the organization but they don't really do anything. And so you can tell how committed they are to the cause by how much community outreach they do, by how often they actually have meetings, looking at the numbers, and I'll use Oracle because it's near and dear to my heart, is they're like 37% minority and women, and so is the management. So if you see that they have, 38% of our employees are people of minority, women, people of color, and then you see the management's like 3%, then that's not so impressive. So it's about learning what to see. So what are they doing well is more are creating these organizations, right, to bring together the women within organizations, larger companies, bring together the veterans, bring together certain ethnic groups, racial groups. But then look at what are they really doing with those. Is it just on a website? Or do they actually have an event every single month and do community outreach? Do they have university relations? Do they have open houses? Really, what are they doing? And I think when you study that within organizations that are of interest to you, then you really get a sense of who's committed and who isn't. So that's one way to tell. When I worked at Siemens, the German company, it was hilarious because the entire German board looks like the German parliament. But this is Silicon Valley, so you think it'd be different. And then there was a woman named Yvette Castañón. She was a Latina marketing manager that was like head of the group, pretty high up there. She tried to put together an ERG, but she couldn't even get the organization to approve it because they weren't sure they wanted to go there. So you learn a lot about the commitment by how they have those groups or if they have those groups. So I think from a student perspective, if you're looking at which companies are more open to really bringing you in as a new hire and actually helping you go somewhere up, study that and see who's really committed.
And then
Versus
ERG
yeah.
is an employee resource group?
And sometimes they're called affinity groups, like Cisco has really good ones that are very active and they work with mission, but all the people that we've met through the years. But some are just like, they say they have one, and then when you actually talk to the people, they invite you to speak. This is how I find out. Oh, we don't really have a budget. So it's like they're kind of a pretend organization that they kind of exist, but they don't really do anything. So that's kind of a telling way of how active. And then how many do they have? Do they have like 3 Latinos and they say they have a group? Or do they have like a group of women and there's only like 12 and a company of 6,000? Or is it something else? And so that's a really good marker for understanding true commitment. And that applies to all kinds of tech companies, all kinds of industries. So that's how I'll answer that question.
Sure, I guess to connect that to, I would hope to see more interactions between the tech companies and the specific groups that you're talking about. With universities, especially groups within universities that are there to help minorities and people that didn't really come as prepared to go to school, and especially at a place like Berkeley. So to have that connectedness to, because I think we were having a conversation at the lunch table that there was a student that was doing computer science here at Berkeley, and she's doing all that stuff, but then she didn't know how to do a resume that would sort of work with the tech industry. So to have that mentorship, that connectedness between the groups that would help her here on campus, and then the groups that would be helping her in the tech sector. So I don't think I see enough of that. I don't even know if it exists, but I would like to see something like that.
Yeah, and that is the lifelong mentoring. A lot of times mentoring, we think we're going to get them into college. Well, then they still, Latinos drop out of college 50% of the time.
Yeah.
So you have to still have that mentor all the way through. And then, what if you're at the other end and you're looking for that job, but you don't know how to do your resume? So that ability to mentor each other and to connect students to mentors in the world goes all the way through graduation
and beyond that, exactly, because it's not just when you get here, you graduate here, it's going to, because chances are if you were the first to get to university, you are going to be the first one to be in the workforce,
right.
like yourself, the first one that's going to be, now for me it was like, the first one that, was going to go to, like, be an earthquake engineer in industry, and I didn't really see people like myself, and then now, like, the first one that I knew of, now I know more people, thankfully, that is going to go into entrepreneurship and things like that. So have good mentorship across the way, fundamental.
And I think the intel also we can gain from Facebook groups, like different ways to associate on Facebook. We can really share information about companies as well. I know we do that all the time. There's a good friend of mine who launches satellites for a living down in Palo Alto, Indiana. And she, on Facebook, about 2 years ago, was like, I'm working in this engineering group and I want to be a manager. They're actually asking for managers and I really don't know if I should apply because they've never had a woman manager and so I'm Latina. So like a place where we can talk to each other. We all just like said, do it, here's how you do it, this is how you promote yourself. And guess what? She got hired as the first Latina manager, first woman manager to the satellite group. And now she's actually going to go for a director level. But it's this ability to just have a place where you can say, hey ladies, hey people, what do you think? I want to do this. And not with the people who are going to tell you they're crazy with your cousin, right? But with people that can actually encourage you. So seek people that will actually encourage you.
Support you, yeah.
Exactly, with all of that.
Yeah, that's actually an exact resource that we can provide for you all right now. All you ladies, we have a group on Facebook right now. It's called Women of Color in Tech. You need to be invited, so if you're interested, you can ask either one of us. We're all part of that group, and it's growing. Like in 3 months, we grew to 1,000 members, and they're very engaged conversations. And they have job postings, they have all these amazing things, amazing resources. So that's something that I would love to get you all on right there. We're actually running out of time, so I want to open it up for questions. But can I get, starting with Ruby, can you give me a one-liner? You're, learning the pitching, we're all practicing pitching. What would be the one-liner advice to the next generation of tech entrepreneurs?
Get out of your comfort zone.
Love it! Yes.
Be uncomfortable with being comfortable.
Thank you, I love it.
So perfect. And don't take no for an answer, that you just keep knocking in different doors until you get a yes and finding the right people. So you're bound to get it, it just takes time. And keep at it.
History does not remember the nice woman? Or the non-rebelde?
Yeah.
So history, I'm not not a direct quote, 'cause I'm not but that history doesn't remember, you know, the women and the people who just did everything else. You know, as a marketing terms, marketer, differentiation, right? Be different, be diferente. Embrace being different and thinking differently.
Status quo is boring.
Yeah, look at the status quo and say, no, I'm not doing that. And that's what I've done, that's what all of us have done at some point. And love that you can do that and that you have the intellectual capacity to decide to do that and then to surround yourself with others.
Thank you, ladies.
What's
We're gonna
yours?
open it up to the floor.
yours?
What's mine?
Yeah.
I gave out a lot of one-liners. You guys did it for me.
You do the women in tech resource, but that'll count.
Yeah, that's my direct resource. My one-liner is use us as a resource.
There you go.
Leverage us. We've already gone through a lot of the things that you're going to go through, and so many other things we didn't even talk about. Right? Sexual harassment at work. It happens. Okay, I've left 2 jobs because of it. So come talk to us if any of this or things that you want to talk to us about. Definitely use us as a resource, and I'm not just saying that to be nice. We are serious.
Yeah, and also for
We care.
applying for work and getting your resume in front of people that want to see it, that are like
Yeah.
that are asking us to connect with students like you. Okay, because we're out here doing that as well. Okay.
Yes. We care. That's my one-liner. We care. Who would like to ask the first question? What's your name?
My name is Ariadne.
Ariadne.
Yes. So I recently read an article that talked about the statistics of women in the tech industry, and it said that by the year 2020, there's going to be 1.3 million jobs in the computer science, but only 3% of those positions are going to be held by women. So I know that the pipeline issue is one that is definitely great or not great, but it's huge and something that has to be addressed. And we can do things that some of you touched on, like mentoring and arming women or young girls with confidence. But one of the things that I've been struggling with recently is the unconscious bias, especially in the tech industry, and especially in particular to women because of like the bro or like fratty culture in those companies. So I was wondering, and also I think a lot of these issues were brought out by the Ellen Powell case that was recently in the news, such as like sexual harassment and the fact that women are not evaluated as the same as men. So from your perspective, how do you change the culture at the corporate level? Is there any strategies? Because I think, one, it's hard to change culture, and secondly, I think women are a minority, so how can they, when they enter tech companies, make a change?
Thank you. That was one of the questions we didn't get to so far.
I know.
Programmer culture!
So I feel like that was several questions at once, so I'm gonna I don't know, do you guys want to go first?
Go.
I have my best friend is here in the Valley. She's an attorney, intellectual property, and so she's worked for tech companies ever since she left. Graduate from Cal. And we team up and we go into tech companies and do brown bag lunches for women, ERGs, the resource groups, on top 10 tips to manage your career or the top 10 pieces of advice I never got, things like this. So this is something near and dear to my heart about this. And we have like horrendous stories of things that happen. So the first thing that I would say is, I was once told by a senior VP of sales, I wish that you were single and could just be here all the time working. So straight up, I wish you were single and could just be here all the time working. I'm like, well, that's not why they hired me. Okay, but I mean, just to say that, right? So I think what's really important is when you come into an organization to know why you're there, who hired you, are you hiding your children? If you're hiding your children, suddenly they pop up, okay, that's a problem. So, but don't hide your children, right? So authentically be there, authentically understand your role and the value and why you're there. And what was happening in that organization is the general manager who hired me, I basically had to stick him on the VP and say, he's saying this to me, right? Can you go talk to him? So know who your champions are in the organization that brought you in, that understand your value, and never feel like you have to be always alone against all that. Because guess what? Cultures don't change. you know, does our culture change? Like, do we like suddenly get rid of all those social expectations on the girls? No, it just is what it is. So it's not about changing it, it's about seeing what it is and then learning how to navigate it. That's how you succeed, is finding out who are your friends, who is your champion, you know, how can I do this, and do I stay here or do I walk, right? And keeping your power and never letting them have that power over you to make you cry, to make you angry, and to do all those things that they think you're gonna do, because then you're just feeding into that. We're not gonna change that culture. The best you can do is find companies that are much more welcoming to you. Avoid the ones that you've heard the really bad stuff about, because it's true. And just be smart with where you allow your talent to be used. It's really, it's your power to keep. My friend Sonia, if she was here, she would say, why would you ever stay in a place like that? Or why would you want to go work in a place like that? Because not all companies are like that. That's kind of a broad brush with all that stuff that's coming out. There's a lot of companies that are not like that. And so be smart, again, use your network. What have you heard about? What have you heard about? Okay, and don't try to go in there and say, well, I'm going to change you guys, because you're not. I mean, you can't. It's not changeable.
One, don't mean to jump in here, but I'm going to anyway.
Jump in.
But I would say that's why we're entrepreneurs, because that way you get to create your own culture.
Right.
Right, so there's no such thing as I don't fit in. That way you get to select people who fit in with your culture. And I'll tell you, the company I'm at right now, they hired me because I'm crazy, right? Like you know what I brought into work on the second day? Like I bought a plush size minion from Despicable Me, and I'm like, hi guys, here's our new CEO.
Yeah.
Like that's what I brought to the office, and they're like,
These places
like there was an applause, right? They're applauding, like yeah, right. So go to places that love who you are. Don't try to hide that part.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, and having said that, I mean, too, and you know, also going and realize that even companies that are so big, there's still niches within those companies that are gonna be good. Not just because one part was bad doesn't mean that everything is bad. It's just more when you go into it, be intuitive enough that you analyze it for what it is, and always value yourself enough to the point that you realize that it's no longer they're no longer gonna, because it's important to value yourself, because cultures within a company, within little groups, they're gonna change. Things are gonna change over time, and unless you're willing to go and change as change is happening, you're gonna get stuck, right? So it might start good at the beginning, it might change. So you have to know where to put your foot down and be like, okay, I'm ready for a new beginning somewhere else. So that's number one, being aware of that, and finding the people like Gertrude was saying, that are going to champion you, are going to support you. And also, if you're talking about cultural changes, I mean, sure, you can't change it in one day and affect it, but by you rising through the cracks and making yourself up to the top, then you're kind of bringing awareness to other people about that, you know, people like yourself can be successful. Like I was saying, like a lot of people I've come across that are in disbelief of me being capable of doing something like this as well. It's the first time they've encountered somebody like myself. So I can't just get stuck on that, you know? That my job is to keep going and going and going, and one day, you know, I'll get up there, I'll be a great CEO, I'll be, you know, leading a great company, and at that point it's like, okay, well now this is an example. So if you want to make really effective, you know, influence, I wouldn't necessarily call it complete change, radical change, but influence, get to the top. Be the best that you can at what you do, right? So that there is no like, oh, but you're not good at this or whatever. It's like, do your best. Always leaving good marks wherever you go and get to the top.
And when they're promoting, apply.
Yeah. In those
Versus,
seconds,
oh, they're not going to
exactly.
pick me because they've never had a woman. That's why I gave you the example of Diana, because she said, well, you think should I do it? And guess what? And now she's going for the next level, versus if she really had internalized that she shouldn't and she wouldn't.
Yeah. Don't
So-
bring yourself out.
Exactly.
Yeah. Don't let that be the case.
They said almost everything I want to say, but in terms of
Ditto.
yeah, covered everything. No, in terms of like the unconscious bias, I feel like it's really hard to have a conversation and change people's minds around it. So I really resonated with what you said, which is basically prove them wrong. I use, I guess, basketball as an analogy, right? Anytime I go to the YMCA and there's like, it's all guys, right? Half of them have shirts up, whatever. Anyway, And they're playing like hardcore. They're all like really, really tall guys that look like they played basketball in university. And like here I am, like short in comparison, and like I'm putting my name on the board, and people are like, "What is she doing here?" And so at the very beginning, everyone's like really easy on. They're like, "Oh, she doesn't know how to play. Maybe she doesn't know what she's doing."
And they start stealing the ball.
Yeah, and then you start stealing the ball, you start making the shots, and all of a sudden they're like, "You gotta get that girl." Cover her. And I feel like it's the same thing in any other situation. It's like the best way to show people that, you know, their preconceptions are wrong is to prove them wrong and to, like you said, just be the best at what you
Yeah,
love.
be the best at what you and don't waste time being sad about it, because there's always gonna be good people and bad people everywhere. If you waste your time being sad about, oh my God, they thought of this of me, this and that, sure, spend your 5 minutes of like, I remember I talked to a VC and I was like, came out of it and I was like, I think I need to cry. Right? I was like, I'm gonna get ready for this. And then, you know, and I let it out, but I was like, you know what? He doesn't know any better, and he doesn't see the, you know. And I remember I talked to my boyfriend, and I called him, and I was like, guess what just happened? I don't even know why I had this conversation with this guy. And he's like, well, look at where he came from, and then look at where you are, and just remember that there's gonna be bad people, but then there's gonna be that. And he's like, remember that one VC that you met that one time that he was like blown away, and he's like, you need to just do it tomorrow, and that, you know, he said. You know, and I'm like, okay, you're right. There was that person that, you know, in that specific moment. So he made that comparison. It's the kind of stuff you have to do to yourself. You know, it's like, of course we're human. We're gonna feel a little sad. We're like, oh, here we go again. Oh, you know, they're messed up. But then it's like you get over it fast, move on, spend time on improving yourself, on growing and getting further and further. And like everybody else is just gonna be behind the scenes. You know.
And I think one of the most powerful things that is being said here, and it's said tangibly and sort of overheard, is surround yourself with a powerful network of people that believe in you. And that, I know that's one of the reasons why you guys are at Cal in the first place. But continue that. It never stops. I'll tell you right now, I've had many situations where I just come out of the conversation and like pissed, right? I'm like, I want to cry, I want to punch something, I'm like ready, and I'll call up my boyfriend, and he'll go immediately to like, you want me to kill him? And it'll snap me out of that moment, and I'll start laughing, and you're like, you're right, it's not that bad.
Yeah.
Right? But then he'll be like, okay, like, be empathetic. You still need them to like pay attention, right? And be like, okay, what really happened? But you need somebody to help you not go down that rabbit hole, and then be like, okay, that happened, but what do you know is true, and how are you going to keep moving forward?
Can I add one thought to that? Because I'm still thinking about what you asked me, or what you asked all of us. Pam Campos is a good friend of mine from the Latina Leadership Network group, and she's an Air Force veteran, and she was speaking at Latinas Think Big in LA when I first heard her speak. She's an Air Force vet and just this really amazing woman. I think she's going to be our first Latina president, just prediction. But she said, she knows the story, I'm not going to tell you the whole story, but she summed it up by just saying this, and it has something to do with playing soccer in Afghanistan with all the guys. She's deployed over there. And being asked what the hell she thought she was doing out there on the soccer. And she just stood on the stage and she said, so this is what I said and this is what I want you to remember. I belong here. I am needed here. This is where I'm supposed to be. In other words, she doesn't give a damn about their bias. It's what she believes and she projects. The picture I showed you, the military, I never asked them, do you think I'm supposed to be here? And if I ever got that vibe, I missed it because I didn't care. I belong. This is where I'm supposed to be. And I'm even here. And if you really believe that, and if you act accordingly, and you learn and you navigate and you are aware and you get the advice, but core you believe that, you're going to be fine no matter where you are. Until such time as you decide that you can do better, right? But it's that power within yourself to know that you're supposed to be there even if you're the only one. And I just wanted to stress that with your questions.
Thank you. And I think that's a beautiful way of cerrar con broche de oro, as they say. I want to be respectful to all of your time. Thank you so much for joining us. Patricia, Hector, would you like to
I just wanted to
any
say, yes, a big thank you to our panelists. Thank you to our students who helped put this together, and to invite you all to come back to the Center for Latino Policy Research, and to also invite you next to the next room for some refreshments. Thank you very much.
And we want to hear the questions.